Okay, so I'm going to discuss paper residencies, the top three paper residencies in this video. There's a lot of demand, a lot of questions and queries that I get. What are the best paper residencies that I can get started with? So I'm going to address this in a lot of detail, talk about all three options, some pros and cons. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to turn on the bell notification and subscribe so you don't miss out on any important videos, news break, as well as my analysis. And this is not immigration or legal advice. This is my assessment and educational content. Now, before we deep dive into what are the three paper residency options, there's one very important point that I would like to raise is the definition of paper residency. Now, each one thinks of this differently. It's very important to clarify and understand what I mean when I say paper residency. Now, paper residency is a flexible residency. Okay, that's what I mean by the term paper residency. There's a lot of permits, temporary as well as permanent, especially Western countries would enforce number of days as a criteria. So if you're talking about US or Canada or any of those countries, then your residency permit is valid if you satisfy certain physical presence requirements in the country or some of the criteria which is attached to you being in the country. And if you don't satisfy that, they take away, they invalidate, or they could terminate the permit. When there are certain other countries where they haven't defined this criteria. They don't say that you have to live there 60 days, 180 days, or 30 days, or whatever it is. They have kept it flexible. So that is where that is what I'm referring to as flexible residency. And even if it is 30 days, that's quite a less number of days to satisfy. So that is also a flexible residency, and that is what I mean by paper residency. A lot of people have very different notions about what a paper residency means, and this could, I'm not saying it will always, but it could lead to fraud. It could be viewed as fraud based on your intentions. Now, if you want to check out my video on if paper residency could cause immigration fraud, you can return and take a look at this link. This talks about this matter in a lot of detail. All right, so the number one country on my list is Paraguay. Now, Paraguay used to have a very solid, full-blown, flexible, permanent residency where you could deposit just 5,000 in your bank account and avail a permanent residency which was flexible. Now, too good to be true options don't stay, and that is why it's very important to grab these options before they're taken away. There are two or three things that happen with these and they eventually go. One is Western governments will try to put pressure and get these options out because they don't want more options for people, because then that leads to a lot of chaos and confusion. They want straightforward residencies, which then generate a lot of taxes. So Western governments typically will try to pressurize smaller countries to either stop or face the brunt, the penalties, the costs associated. If people don't pay the money, then you pay the money. So either you pay the money or cancel the residency. So that's kind of the logic that's typically employed. The second scenario is where these countries realize that people are benefiting more than they are, and they will then soon cancel options. They'll start canceling options or changing from permanent to temporary residency. Like in the case of Paraguay, a lot of countries completely changed the criteria on the temporary residency. Like Colombia, they revamped a lot of their rules in the country. Now the whole immigration system is very less attractive. Now, a lot of these permits and residencies were created in the past, in the olden days, when they were seeking more money. But now, these are getting more obsolete. They don't want these options. They want people to pay a golden fee, a heavy fee, if you want to immigrate and get these instantly. If you want the flexibility, like the Portugal Golden Visa, then you have to pay a very high price. So while this opportunity exists, it's very important to lock in your options so that in future you at least can exercise these options. And if you want to get an important citizenship, you don't know which one at this point, but when you have multiple options, then you can decide which citizenship best fits your circumstances based on either the access that you're looking for or the circumstances that you are facing, the relations between your home country and the citizenship country that you seek. Now, the number one, as I said, is Paraguay. Now it's a temporary residency, and number one in the sense it just happens to be one in my order. I'm not saying this is the best. So Paraguay has very clear, straightforward process. You have your professional degrees, you pay the fee, you get your police checks, and then you can qualify for temporary residency. If you're interested, you can always click the link in the description, book a call with us, and we can get you started with our team on Paraguay. The biggest con with Paraguay is that it does not lead to citizenship that easily, right? It's a very bureaucratic process. The time to get citizenship is variable, case by case basis. It's not with clear certainty. It's not like Mexico, where you have a very defined, clear process. So Paraguay is the first one. The second one is Ecuador. Now, Ecuador, again, has very interesting options. A lot of people are aware of the 42.5K in either a bank account or a property. If you invest that amount in Ecuador, then you qualify for a temporary residency. Again, this is a very flexible temporary residency. There's no minimum stay prescribed. So you can live as much or as less as you want, as long as you're being consistent with why you got this in the first place. And if you aren't sure, make sure to watch the video that I had referenced earlier, which is very important to understand you're getting this correct. Now, the second option in Ecuador is the free option, the almost free option, meaning no golden visa fees or no big investment amounts required. Here, if you have a professional degree, bachelor's, master's, as long as it's a professional recognized degree, you can register this degree in the Ecuadorian system. That takes time. That's somewhat of a process. But once that's entered, you then are eligible to apply for a visa to Ecuador, the right kind of residency visa, and then you can do your processing from Ecuador. Again, we work with a very solid attorney in Ecuador. In case you are interested, you can always reach out to us. The third option is the third flexible residency option. Or before I even jump to the third option, one quick note about the biggest con about Ecuador is that if you're looking to convert this into a permanent residency, then you're looking at physical presence required. You can't be outside for more than 90 days a year. For 2 years, then you qualify for your permanent residency. Now, there's also residency requirements on the permanent residency if you want to keep the permanent residency and if you want to change this into a citizenship. So if you want to be an Ecuadorian citizen, then you are looking at physical presence requirements. But if you want to have your option in place, which is a good solid temporary residency, then you have that with the TRC. Now, the third option is a hot favorite, and this I believe is the number one option, in my opinion, is Mexico, and Mexico has the TRC as well, 2 or 3 different criteria. I've discussed this in a lot of detail: safety situation, the benefits, the advantages, the pros, the cons, why the Mexican citizenship is so much better than other Latin citizenships, and I've discussed all of this with my attorney. And if you have missed that very important coverage on Mexico, which covers the option A to Z, you can return and take a look at this video. This would clarify most of your doubts. Now, with Mexico, the deal is the flexibility comes with the TRC, also the PR. The PR is quite flexible as well. So if you're getting this, there's no minimum stay prescribed. You can live as much as you want, or or not live as much as you want, as long as you're being consistent with what you have told immigration. A certain residency which you would need anyways, because you want to go there, renew your permit and all of that. But if you're being consistent with the reasons that you've quoted to immigration, and this is not immigration or legal advice, but as long as you're being consistent with what you've told the authorities, you should be fine. Now, if you're looking to convert the Mexican TRC into the citizenship, right, the Mexican TRC into the PR and then the citizenship, then you're looking at 1.5 years worth of stay in the country, 2 years prior to applying for the citizenship. So let's say you're counting the 2 years just before you apply for citizenship. You should have lived in the country for at least a year and a half. You could be out for no more than 6 months, and then you should be fine. So these are the top 3 flexible paper residencies where there's no minimum prescribed amount of time on the ground. That doesn't mean that you can abuse this by keeping it in just in your back pocket, never going there. Of course, you got to go there, you got to renew your permits and all of that. And if there's inconsistency between what you have told them why you're getting this for and what you're doing with it, it could land you in hot trouble. Therefore, make sure to return and watch that video that I referenced in the past. It's a very important video that clarifies the concept of paper residencies, the confusions, and how you should be viewing it. All right. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're subbed, and catch you in the next one.